Standing by, the Terry and Ted podcast is sponsored by the UPS Store Canada.
It's another episode of Season 5 of the podcast, and to celebrate this episode, Ted and I have matching blouses on.
It's the blue shirt episode. This episode brought to you by blue T-shirts. I didn't.
We didn't check with each other before we left the house this morning.
Yeah.
And that's
here we are
unfortunate.
in uniform.
If you're watching on YouTube, you know what it's all about. But
Yeah.
if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it doesn't.
You're saying who cares?
Yeah,
who cares what you're wearing?
Yeah, shut the fuck up. It doesn't matter. Get on with it, man.
Yeah.
And we can't get on with it without our friends at the UPS Store Canada. While we were recording, or while I was in town to record the episodes, we did a little makeshift video in front of a UPS store on Sources Road. That location has been there for quite some time, and so have the other 370 locations across the country. The UPS store, I know what you think when you see the UPS logo. You think of the truck and the shipping company, but there's more in the UPS store that can help you, your family, or your business. For example, they do not just packaging and shipping, they also do mailbox services. A lot of people like to open a separate mailbox for an at-home business. They can help you with that. Need a new passport photo? They can help you with that. Need to shred some documents? They can help you with that. Looking for great packaging? You know, you're looking for packing peanuts, looking for that kind of thing, packing tape? They can help you with all of that. So if you run a small business from home, or you need to get that vase to Auntie Griselda out in Saskatchewan.
You need a new auntie. It's always Griselda. How about Aunt Effie? Your great Aunt Effie.
The great Aunt Effie needs that vase. They can help you ship it and pack it. And as I like to remind you, the people running these stores are entrepreneurs themselves. They're all franchise owners who understand what it is to run a small business.
And they're all local folks, too, from your community. They could be the guy who fires up the lawnmower at 7 o'clock in the morning and robs you of that valuable weekend sleep. Yeah. Hell of a businessman, though. Go to his store.
Yeah. The UPS Store Canada. So go to the upsstore.ca and find the location nearest you. Speaking of people from the neighborhood, we got a nice Verdun boy in with us.
Yes, we sure do.
And I was born and raised in Verdun, so I really, I was born partially raised in Verdun, and then I was raised on the West Island. Don't hold that against me, Sterling.
That's okay.
It's okay. Because you never left Verdun.
I never left.
You can tell by the way he's saying that's okay.
Yeah,
that it's
it wasn't
not
okay. Yeah.
It was a choice. It was a choice. We don't always make the best ones.
My mom was born on LaSalle Boulevard. My dad was born on Moffat. We grew up. I was born on Moffat. The last place we had was Osborne. I went to St. Thomas More, which I'm sure is Ecole quelque chose now.
No, it's an empty school.
Oh, it's an empty school.
It's an empty school.
That's because there are no English kids to send there.
Uh-huh.
So I got bona fide Verdun roots. I really do.
And you're in my sector, in my district. Everything that you just named is
that
pretty
right?
much my district.
That's your area?
Yeah, Demarche Crawford, yeah.
There you go. Crawford Park, that's the fancy part now.
That is, yeah. It's funny how social housing for veterans becomes a gated community.
It's all gentrified now, is it?
Well, $5,000 for a house in 1953, and now $1.1 million
in Crawford Park.
Crawford Park,
yeah,
all war houses.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Because when I was a kid, I remember there was a Canadian minister that lived on Beatty, and we thought there's only enough room for about 5 or 6 rich people in Verdun, and they all live in on Beatty. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's true anymore.
Well, this was before Nuns Island, right? It was when Nuns Island was
that's
still
right.
a forest.
Yeah, that's right.
And there were still nuns.
Did we properly introduce our guest?
Sir, we
no,
did
we
not.
didn't.
No.
Okay.
Sterling Downey is a Montreal City Councillor. That is just one of many hats Sterling has worn over the years. And I was saying earlier this morning on a Facebook video that I did that in a season of eclectic guests, and I mean this with the greatest of respect and admiration, Sterling, you are more eclectic than all the rest of our guests combined. Your history is so colorful, and your personality is so big. It's just, I'm really looking forward to this. Half of what was going on before the cameras started to roll and the microphones were on, I was saying, This would be good on the podcast.
Yeah, stop talking.
Yeah, save it for the podcast. And I'm also going to apologize in advance because at least once during the podcast, I'm going to call you Stuart.
That's fine.
Does that ever happen to you, or am I the only one with that mental block?
It happens. Well, at least you're not going to call me steering.
No.
So that's good. As long as you don't call me steering. You know, I've got Stuart. I get Stuart a lot. There's I know somebody from the Black Watch who would love that. He calls me Stuart all the time.
It's a good Scottish name, I guess, as is Sterling. Does Sterling have Scottish roots, or is that more of an English name?
You know, it's questionable. Unfortunately, my parents passed away when I was young, and my grandparents. But I mean, my understanding is my grandmother was Welsh, grew up in England, though, in Bermondsey. So the Sterling is more, I was named after Sterling Moss, who you know was a famous Formula driver, and also Sterling Lyon, who was the premier of BC. Manitoba, you're right. So I hated my name when I was a kid. Those are the two stories I got. You're named after two very famous people. And ironically, I lived life in the fast lane, like you said, and God forbid I ended up in bloody politics. So it is true. Be careful what you name your children because it will define their future. And English, I guess, because it's spelled with an E, right? So it's not with an I. So the I would be the Irish-Scottish version, I think, and the E is the English.
My dad had a business partner named Sterling, spelled the same way as yours, and he used to call him Sturl. People call you Sturl?
People call me Sturl. Yeah.
And I would imagine in Montreal it's Sterling.
Sterling.
Yeah.
My close friends call me, if I'm allowed to say it on here, they call me fucko.
Okay.
Just so you know. That my very close friends that have known me for a very long time just call me fucko.
Not only are you allowed to say it on here, we insist.
The Honorable Deputy Mayor, fucko.
It is what it is.
Your honor.
Well, it's a dishonorable fucko.
His worship, fucko.
Let's start at the beginning. Sterling, you said you had a pretty colorful childhood, teenage years?
Extremely colorful.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm very open and very vocal about the stuff I've done because I think my track record throughout my career has shown where my values and convictions are. And like everybody, you know, when you're a kid, you make mistakes. You look for things. You try to figure out who you are, your identity. And, you know, born and raised in Verdun. So, you know, you get cut from two cloths. You know, you've got some people who come from not well off, but decent means. And then you got people like me who my father was a Second World War veteran. He had me when he was 51 years old. So, you know, when I was 13, 14 years old and I wanted to skateboard or do something, my father was like, why aren't you working? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you serious? Not realizing that man 2 years later, when he was 16, was off on a Corvette on the Atlantic and in one of the biggest theaters of war. He lied. They all lied about their age, right? My uncle, his brother, prisoner of war, sunk on the Athabascan and one of the survivors in the English Channel, and he was lucky to survive. So I come from tough love, to some degree, and I come from roll up your sleeves, get the job done. If you're up until 2 a.m. and you're supposed to be up at 6, you get up at 6 and you suck it up. That's hard on a teenager, right? So, you know, and also, you know, a tall kid, big kid with a weird name at the first. So, you know, I got bullied a lot. I got teased a lot. I didn't really fit in. I was very timid, mama's boy, brought up by my grandmother, my aunts, and all that. And unfortunately, you know, those things had an impact on me in terms of who I was. And the kids in my neighborhood, some of them were tougher with me than others. And that led me, by the time I went into high school, to start to really figure out, like, I was really afraid of certain people. So I had to stand up for myself. Unfortunately, got into punk rock music through skateboarding. Wasn't allowed to have a mohawk when I went to Argyle Academy back in the day in Verdun, the old Verdun High. Became Argyle Academy, these uniforms. Wasn't allowed to have a mohawk or do anything. Even today, I would never even try to put a mohawk on, considering my respect for First Peoples. But at that time, it was like, oh, well, you can shave your head. So, you know, I was like punk rock, army boots, shaved head. And then that led to getting associated with certain gangs of people, became a skinhead, didn't realize the ideologies, got sucked into some of those ideologies. Very American History X movie. Very
That's a great movie, by the way.
Very powerful movie, and I have to say, a very true story, and I can really identify with it, because what happens is it slowly gets chipped away at. It's your insecurities, you know, you want to fit in, you want to do things. Sometimes you'll bend and do things a certain way to fit in, and you won't speak up. Got sucked into that for a couple of years, about 2 years of my life. It was very, very, very difficult kind of ride, because, I mean, you know, it's some serious stuff that I was involved in at 14, hanging out with 25-year-olds. Was lucky that I always had a good head on my shoulders, had good seeds planted in my head, managed to get out of it. By the age of 19, I started doing gang intervention work on my own. Saw kids that were getting sucked into these things. I was like, no, you're not going to do this. And that kind of started me on a path to doing youth work, doing other things. Got involved in graffiti. Started my festival at 22, so I became a very well-known vandal in the city. Sued for arrested.
That'd be a good punk rock band name, the Well-Known Vandals.
Well-known vandals. There you go. But did that, and so I had a rocky thing. Worked in the clothing industry and brand management and marketing right here up on Chabanel, and in this area. I was working here for about 10 years, doing my festival at the same time, and just always kind of fighting for something. Always, I guess the point of that is there was always a fight. There always seemed to be a fight. I always had to find some sort of conflict. I needed some sort of a challenge, but I didn't know how to really, I guess, target that energy or place it properly. And 40 years old, I turned 39. And, somebody comes up to me and is like, "Oh, you should run in politics." The first thing I do is laugh, and I think of House of Cards, and I think of that scene in House of Cards where, I don't know if you remember in the first season before it got canceled. First season, the bald guy, I forgot the character's name, but I think something happens with some drugs and maybe some shady women, and something happens anyways. And at a certain point, he has to be like, "Oh, you have to tell us everything so we know, so we can manage this crisis if it goes out publicly." And my entry into politics, I felt like it was a little bit like that. Not the drugs, because I'm straight edge, and it's very important to mention. Because of what I saw when I was a teenager, I stopped drinking, doing drugs, and everything by age of 21. So I've been completely sober since the age of 21. But when I entered into politics, I sat them down and I said, "Do you like... You know who I am? You read the news?" So this is me being ignorant, like not knowing. And they just want to hear me go. Told them everything about my past, told them everything about from that point to here. And they were like, "Yeah, we knew all this."
Did it come up? Because
Yep.
that
I brought it up.
No, well, you brought it up, but did it appear in, during the campaign?
Yep.
Did anybody try and paint you with it?
So again, where I'm born and raised, people know me, right?
Right.
So they know that kid who was before that,
Right.
that, and then after that. They saw it. So anyone who doesn't know, it's obviously if you take just a section of that and you try to paint a picture based on a section of that, then it's very specific. Now, if you do that, it's fine. You can. But remember, that's a 14-year-old kid that you're judging.
Yeah.
That you're not judging a 40-year-old man. Now.
No.
You're judging a 14-year-old kid, because today, if I was doing that, that's a different story.
Right.
Then I was a confused kid. So in my second campaign, not in my first one, but in my second one, obviously because I talk about it so much and I'm very public, everyone knew. So in my second campaign, there were people who did door to door and did tell people that I was an ex-skinhead and tried to use that to sway opinions. It might have worked on some people, but a lot of people would answer and say, "Well, yeah, we know him and we know his thing. It's on the news. He talks about it. He works with youth. He works with this. He does that." People were like, "It doesn't. What are you trying to say?" It's like, that's not what he is now, and he was 14. He was a minor.
That's the dribble of the Trump politics.
Well, and
that
that's what it was.
begins to dribble into not just provincial and federal politics, but even municipal politics.
Absolutely.
Hey, have you heard?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky. I guess I'm lucky. And I mean, I think anyone who knows me or has taken the time to know me knows I'm kind of a no bullshit person. It's that's the one thing that I learned, I think, from my father, that as much as I had a difficult upbringing, I think I learned one thing that always stuck with me, which was, if you do something, you're accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to do it, you bloody well better be willing to assume it. Yeah. You can change, but you got to assume it. And again, same thing. You sign up to go to war at 16, you lie about your age. By the time you're out on the Atlantic and you're being torpedoed, you can't just turn around and say, "Oh, I lied, I'm going home." It's like, no, you're in this now, and you're So that always kind of stuck and resonated with me, where there's a consequence with an action. And it's funny because it's something that, and I'm proud to say, and I believe it, it's something that has guided me through municipal politics, because I know who I am. I know what my beliefs are. I know what my values are. I know that I can make mistakes. I can change opinions. I can change my own opinion. I can change my position on something. But I also know that nobody else is going to make me drink the Kool-Aid and follow. If I follow something, it's because I actually believe there's merit to it. If I don't believe it, I'm not a 14-year-old kid that you're going to convince to do something that he wasn't, go do this, because we'll accept you if you do this. It's like, no.
When you were making the decision, when you were telling how, the people on the team how, and being honest with them, and they said, that's okay, we don't care, we know your reputation, run for us. Yep. What about the reverse of that? How did you have to make a decision based on what they represented? Because it's a big town with a lot of different councillors and, you know, a mayor who, in my opinion, seems to pay attention only to a certain part of the town. Those are decisions you have to make as somebody who needs to represent the people of Verdun, but has to carry the baggage of decisions that are made at City Hall. That's a difficult decision to make, is it not?
It's huge. It's a huge burden. And, you know, somebody said to me when I ran, because basically the reason I tried to discourage them from having me run wasn't because, I mean, I shouldn't do it. It was because I was still that 14-year-old kid in my head in a certain way. I was still insecure. I didn't have the confidence. I have a high school education. I was always told I'm never going to go anywhere in my life. So I became an entrepreneur and I just decided and made my own rules. So this was a new thing where I was being thrown this opportunity, this privilege to represent a community, this responsibility, this weight, this burden, this whatever you want to call it, this anchor, but this great privilege. And I was like, can I actually rise up to this and do this? Like, can Sterling Downey from, you know, Crawford Park, who was in all of these problems, can I actually do this? And somebody, you know, people in my neighborhood, like I kind of put it out there and I kind of talked to some people and some older people. And they said, well, one, this is a great opportunity. Your parents would be proud of you. This is like, you know, my parents had passed. So that weighed a lot on me being like, okay, this is something I can do in honor of them. My father served. I didn't have the discipline to serve in the military, but oh, maybe this is a way I can serve also my community and do something good for people and defend them, be a voice. And somebody said to me, they said, you've been like this activist, this graffiti writer, this whole thing for fighting for all this stuff for like 20 X amount of years. They're like, aren't you tired from fighting from the outside in? And they literally said, you know, if you go into the machine, you can disrupt just as much as you can from the outside. But it's important that you stay you.
Can you say who saw that in you? Who approached you about that? Can you say?
Just people in my community, just parents, just older people who
so
I
not
knew.
one specific person.
No, because not any specific person. Because my biggest fear was losing myself. Because again, look at me. I'm full of tattoos. I'm a very specific person. I speak a specific way, but I'm very respectful. I care. I have a huge heart. And when I say I'm going to do something, I fucking do it. Those are values that are important. And I know myself and I know my path. So when people were like, you can do this, I'm like, but what if I become someone else? What if I lose myself in this? And again, part of it was because I had my own opinions, like a lot of people do, when they say, oh, you're all the same. Oh, you're all suits and ties. You're all spoiled. And I never took the time to get to know, and I wasn't really engaged in politics. So me, it was punk rock, right? It was like suit and tie guy, screw you. Yeah. Stick it to the man, you know, American idiot, you name it. But like, it was all this stuff that was going on. But I was like, okay, well, maybe I also have to listen. And it's funny because my father would have said the same thing if he was still alive. He would have said, you know, and he used to tell me these things. He goes, when we were in the Navy, we sink a submarine, depending on the day, depending on what happened. He didn't tell me all the stories, but like, he was like, those men or those boys are the same as me. And I have to accord and afford them similar respect, because if I'm the one who's in the water and they torpedo me, then if there's no rules and there's no respect, then anything goes, and you can't have that. So politics was kind of the same thing, which was, I was like, I'm judging these people. Maybe let me get in, see, worst case scenario, I leave. You know, I try it.
Were there things that you thought while you're making that decision, were there things in Verdun that you thought to yourself, yeah, maybe I could help those people, maybe I can fix that. Maybe we can do this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's files. Like I live next to the Douglas Hospital, right? So I'm born and raised on the fact that the hospital's been trying to sell off land for, you name it, how many years to build row houses and things like that, just so we can do it. And there's been mayors in the past that have been very favorable, but Crawford Park and, you know, even the Stevens side and all that, that's a big green space for us. That's a natural space. You've got Angry Owl Park on one side. You got the Douglas Hospital. You got the river. You got this. I mean, you're basically living in the country in the city. You're 7 minutes away from downtown by metro.
I didn't know this about the Douglas. It's one of the most beautiful pieces of land.
But they've been trying to develop it, and they're still trying.
Of course.
And the government will one day probably manage to do it because they have ways of doing it. But so that was one of the first things I was like, oh, this is a fight that I remember people talking about when I was a kid. I didn't understand it, but now I'm like, now my parents are passed. I still have the house. I've never moved. I'm like, oh, how will this affect me? because I appreciate going there, walking through there with my dogs or something. So small things like that. You know, there were issues growing up in the neighborhood. The schools were a big issue, right? Because Riverview Elementary, you remember the battle with Riverview Elementary when Leslie Pearson was going to close down that school. It was brick and mortar. Them, they don't care. That's where I went to school. That's where I learned to speak French. That's where I was bullied, but also I have a lot of good stories. That's where there were teachers who believed in me. I wanted my kid to go there. Yep. There's no way in hell on my watch I was going to let this school close down. And we rallied other people, and great people got involved, and we fought, and we kept that school open, and now it's thriving. Same thing with my old high school. You know, like Argyle Academy was already closed. It was already a French school. But then I finished my last year at Verdun Catholic. So when the stage I graduated on is the same stage that I give diplomas to the kids of my friends.
That's very cool.
And for me, and I always say it when I'm on that stage to those kids, I say, I got my diploma on this stage, same as you. And now look at what my job is. And I still live here. You don't have to leave.
Yeah.
You don't have to let anyone ever make you believe that you're not better or good enough or whatever. I am a living example that if I can do this, every single one of you can do this in that room. And these are my friends that went to school with me that are there, and I'm telling that to their kids. But the message is also resonating with them. So, you know, what is affecting change? What is the kind of thing that you can do? And, you know, it's the same thing I was saying before with the previous guest was, you know, when I was named deputy mayor of the city of Montreal, I mean, that's a fancy, swanky little title to have.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, it is, right? But like, I mean, what does that, what powers does that come with? And again, does it really matter, right? So power is an interesting thing too. Like what can you do with power? But if I was to ask you to name who was the deputy mayor before me of Montreal, or who's the deputy mayor now, if I asked you.
Yeah.
So it's what you do with it. If you don't treat it as if it's important, then it's just a title. And I was like, what can I do with this? Well, kids that are in gangs, or when I do youth intervention, or I do mentorship with youth that are struggling, that aren't great in school, like me. Hey, I'm the deputy mayor of the city of Montreal now. You know that. You could be the deputy mayor of the city of Montreal. If I can do it, and I barely passed high school with 60. So the thing is, it's how you use those things, and that's the power you give to it, and then you can actually inspire people and do things. So that's where I've been lucky, and that's where I was glad that I made the choice to go in, because I've managed to be able to affect change.
What's changed for you in terms of your ideology or your politics? What's changed or evolved since you've been, as you describe it, on the inside? Has anything, do you look at anything differently now than you did before you started?
I definitely look at things differently. I really have a hard time. I'm sorry. You know the whole saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
Right.
It's like, I'm the worst, but I'm the best example of that, because I am not good at debating. I am good at yelling at people. I am good at griping. I am good at saying no. Like, I am not great at selling stuff. I am very good at putting this in your face. This is the reality with conviction. I will stand behind it. I will fight tooth and nail, but I'm not very nice about it. Like, I'm not very soft about transition or things. Right. It's like you should know this is the deal. So, you know, so I've learned to kind of shave a little bit of that off and become a little bit more diplomatic. I've learned to listen a lot more to people. Okay. And I mean, there's always two sides to something. One of the most valuable lessons I think I learned in politics since I came in was I like to deal with it. I don't care about huge policy things. It's not my issue. Me, it's day to day. Where can I affect the change that's going to affect you or you today? And if I can affect a lot of change for individuals, then it's an actual impact, right? So what I realized through taking that approach was, your reality, I might disagree with it, but your perception and your reality belongs to you, and it is your reality. Right. It is your perception. What's happening in front of your house on your street is real. It's real to you. That's what you're seeing. It may not be real to me because I don't live there and I'm only coming by from time to time. But this is something that profoundly affects you because it's happening to you. And I had to learn how to listen to that rather than not convince somebody that they're wrong. It's like, no, you're right. But how do we fix it?
I've experienced this with you because when I first met you.
I remember the bike path on Galt. I remember our conversations.
Wellington had just been turned into a pedestrian.
And Galt was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was a horror
Backed
show.
up still sometimes is.
And rather than say to me, you stupid old boomer person, you don't understand the planet is dying. You said, listen, we've already thought about this.
Yep.
There's parking on that street, and we've put parking on this street, and we've put signs up on the street saying, these are the
Directing people to-
places where you can park your car and walk.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay, so you do want people to come down here if they have to use a car and enjoy what we've created on Wellington. And you've accommodated that. That ideology that exists at City Hall has not been well explained to the citizens as you explained it to me.
And and it's interesting that you say that, because one of my biggest grievances that I have in politics, or with even my colleagues in some cases, is how information is transmitted to people. A lot of times, and I'm not slighting anyone that any of my colleagues. I'm not slighting them. I mean, everyone has their own style. Everyone has their own way. It may serve you well. It may not serve you well. I mean, I've been reelected 3 times by my community, and I've been elected by people who disagree with me, but who respect me because they know that I respect them. I will listen. Yeah. And when it comes time to fight for something they want, they know they got a guy like me in their corner. I will fight. If I believe it, if I understand it, if I understand the issue, and I can get behind the issue, I will fight tooth and nail. But it's part of listening and bringing people to something and not trying to convince them that they're wrong and I'm right.
Well, and also you didn't roll your eyes at me.
No.
You know what I mean?
Do that.
Oh, Christ, another one of these guys.
No, but you can't do that. And the thing is, but your perception was right at that moment.
Right.
That's what you saw.
Right.
And that's what's real. And it was real. And it's not just real to you. It's real to a lot of other people. If you're saying it, other people think it.
So let me ask you this. Last night, I was on my way to dinner with friends, and I was standing in front of the television, and on the local news, the lead story was another $30 million for a bike pass. And I thought,
how did I know that was going to come up?
Well, here it comes. No, because I want
This is good. It's okay.
It's a legitimate question. I think I want to ask you
100%.
because the mayor has been in power now for a while, and there is no denying that it's part of her vision for the city.
100%.
Right? And it resonates with a lot of people, and it's considered to be very 21st century, and it's very European. And there's some days I think to myself, she would like it if we could turn it into Copenhagen. And I understand the driving force behind that, but I always get the feeling, and largely it comes out of City Hall, because when confronted with that question, the answer is always, no. This is not what we're doing. We're not doing that. We want to make it for the pedestrian, the cyclist, but slowly but surely, there's another street closed and another no turn sign and another street closed and another block with planters. And it seems to be part of the vision for the city. So my question is, why not just say the city needs to evolve, and the city that you grew up in doesn't work in 2023, and we're going ahead with this?
Well, and you make an extremely valid point, because watch, if I was to tell you, like, we're roughly all from the same generation-ish. So, and that's not me aging you guys, I'm just saying, because I have more gray hair than you.
We're probably about 15 years ahead of you.
Yeah, there you go. But still, we grew up on the same values.
Yeah.
We grew up from the same.
100%.
Don't forget, my father was 51.
Right. Yeah, if your dad was
I was raised probably the same way you guys were.
Boot in the arse generation.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
You're getting
wooden spoon and the belt. Exactly.
Yeah.
So your point's valid, because if I would have said, imagine if we back in our youth would have been forced to take the tramway rather than be able to get a car at 16.
Right.
We would have been like, no, you guys are outdated. I'm not taking the tramway. I can get my license at 16, and it's like, I'm getting a car,
and I did,
and I did. No, but that's it. But but my father, when he was 16, didn't have a car.
No.
So if I would have told that to him, he would have been like, you don't need a car.
Right.
Take the train, take the tramway, or whatever. We walked to school. We fought bears going to school. No, but
both ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, but so the thing is, it's true. Cities evolve generation, but you can't neglect the needs of the older generation too, that are still, that is their way, and they still have to be able to be accommodated. So like when it comes to the bike path, for example, the announcement last night. So, and this is me putting on like my deciphering this and with my political acuity and knowledge that I've acquired now after 10 years is one, we're not building new bike paths. That's important, but that's not clear in the message. It's not to build new bike paths.
Okay.
What it is, it's to the current bike network that exists, it's to secure it. So, like along, say, the Maisonneuve, they've created the cement divider, they've created a space.
With the special traffic lights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's for investments like that, to take areas where the cycling and the active transportation, because and I want to make a point of this, I have a big issue with bike paths. I'm going to tell you what my issue is. I don't like the term bike path.
Okay.
Because bike path is the wrong term. It's unfortunately the term, the piste cyclable bike path, and I say this publicly, they're active transportation lanes.
Yep.
They are not bike paths. This is not about cars and bikes. This is about active mobility. So somebody in a motorized wheelchair, somebody on a skateboard, somebody, you name it, whatever you choose to use, this is a path that you can use. By saying it's a bike path, then there's cohabitation issues with bikes and skateboards and bikes because they're like, get off of here, it's not for you.
Yeah.
But
Didn't you get involved in a controversy along those lines?
I did, and I was lucky in my first mandate while I was in opposition. I somehow managed to pass a motion at City Hall unanimously that recognized skateboards as a formal mode of active transportation, and now they're allowed on bike paths. But again, the problem is you shouldn't be allowing a skateboard on a bike path. You should be adding a skateboard to an active transportation lane.
Right.
And the reason I did that again, and this is where it comes to listening. We're going all over the place, but it's fun.
Sorry, my bad. I threw you off
No,
there.
but this is good. I had two kids come to Borough Council with their father. A 16-year-old and a 17-year-old kid or 18-year-old kid came because we had put the lines on Verdun Avenue. This is pre-bike path, getting rid of the parking. This is when we just did the strips.
Right.
So you're telling people, here's your safe zone to go, and it's got little bikes on it. Like, two kids were skateboarding home. Cops stopped them. They got tickets, $60 tickets each. So their father was furious. Everyone was furious. They're in the bike lane. They're on the street, but they're in the bike lane. They get $60 tickets. They're kids because they were on their way home from school.
Right.
So these kids came and they play, and I was like, in council, I was like, Jesus, I'm so glad that you came. I have a $60 or a $40 ticket from skateboarding at the Natatorium in 1984. I actually have it in my desk under the glass. I have it. I kept it. And I said, that's crazy that when I was skateboarding 25 years ago, or whatever it was, I was getting tickets. Skateboarding is a huge sport worldwide. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Tony Hawk, you name it, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm like, how is it possible that you're getting a ticket? So I was like, we're going to change this. And literally that month I went in, I deposited a motion saying it should be recognized as active transportation. It should be allowed on bike paths, just like we allow wheelchairs, just like we allow anything. And that's it. And it was passed. So
this is a communication thing because
it is.
Last night, what I took away from
was more bike paths.
I don't know who the nice lady was who was bragging about the gajillion cycles that have gone up and down Saint Denis past all the Alloué signs. But she was very excited, and the message I got was, we're spending this amount of money. Here's the budget for more bike paths. So it's a communication idea, and I love this idea of
securing it.
And improving them, but also calling them, what did you call them?
Active transportation lanes.
That's it. Yeah.
But I've been saying this for years, and I've been trying to get this message across.
But this is what I'm asking. If it's part of the DNA of City Hall, why not just admit it? Why not just say, we're taking the city in another direction? Is it because they don't have the courage of their convictions, or they're worried about a backlash? Like, why not just say...
Is it calculated?
We've condos have gone up that block the view of the mountain.
We've privatized the Lachine Canal.
There's now, don't even get me started on Griffintown. And there's now streets that only accommodate a single car in one direction. That all looks to a Montrealer who went to Expo or the Olympics. It all looks to be like whatever vision you had of what Montreal was and what made it such a special and unique place. Ça, c'est fini, là. Ben's is closed. Moishes is closed. You know, the pool room isn't in the same, you know,
Yeah.
all of these iconic things are all done. The city's evolving. So shut up and buy a bike.
Well, so you know,
That's the end of the podcast right there. We're going out on that.
mic drop. No, but it's so, but that's how it comes off.
Yes.
You're not, again. So you see, the thing is, that is a lot of people's perception, and it's due to bad messaging.
Yes,
in my opinion,
it is.
and it's also
Yeah.
due to, I think, people getting their back up against the wall, thinking that just because you criticize me, that's an attack. It's not. It's a valid criticism. It's maybe it's a question through the form of criticism, but then take that opportunity. If the person's interested enough to criticize it, that means they want to talk about it.
Yeah,
they might not want to talk about it the way you want to, but take the time to talk to them.
And I know this is trivial, but I think it's a thorn in the side of Anglophones even more, because Anglophones have lost so much.
Yeah.
Right? The city that their parents, you know, my parents grew up in and that we were familiar with, and good God knows there was an awful lot wrong with it, and it was awash in corruption. You know, we could go on and on about city for sale, but I think there's been so much lost in the Anglophone community. Kids leave, they go to other parts of the country, their kids grow up in Ontario, and then these familiar places start to close, and you stand in St. Henry and you look up the street, but you can't see the mountain anymore because it's all black boxes on René Lévesque. Like, you know, the city is changing. It's changing, and I think, especially in the Anglophone community, people go, God, yes. Like, are we going to have
That's not what
left?
they say in the Anglophone.
No,
community.
I know.
No, they say something else. But
Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, look, it's just in the years that I did graffiti, right?
Yeah.
We were in abandoned buildings. That's what we did.
Yeah.
I learned the history of our city, the industrialization of our city
I
through
bet.
graffiti. It's crazy, but that's how I learned it. Wasn't a history buff, didn't care. Painting in the Red Pass Sugar Refinery for 5-10 years of my life, being like, what is this amazing building, this playground of brick and mortar? Oh, this is the Red Pass Sugar Refinery. Oh, it's by the Lachine Canal. Why? Oh, sugar, this, and who worked here? And oh, wow, painting under the Victoria Bridge or around the Victoria. Oh, who built this? What is this? Why is it like this? Painting the canal. Oh, what do you mean this was dug by shovels by Irish people, like by hand? You know, and then the York Theater. Oh, we're knocking down the York Theater.
Yeah.
Oh, to make the Queen's Hotel. I can name a million buildings that were abandoned for so many years. The Negro Community Center. In the point, like we lose these places, and then you have to ask yourself: it feels like it's a lot of English history disappearing?
Well, it is.
It is 100%. And then you're like, but why aren't you just preserving these things? Why aren't you bringing these names back? Like, why aren't the Red Path Lofts? Why isn't the EV building at Concordia? Why isn't it the York EV building or something? Why aren't we keeping some memory of these things? You know, the Montreal Canadiens hotels. Well, you know, the Queens was right beside there. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not give a little clin d'oeil throwback to this? So I think people are you're right. Like, the more pressure you put on, or the more things you take away. So you take away parking, where my mind goes is, not only am I losing parking, I've lost my rights to this, I've lost my rights to that. Right. And at a certain point, it's just like, you just keep taking from me, or you feel that. You feel like it's being taken. So you feel punished. So you become emotional and you react. And it's, again, it's a valid and real perception. It doesn't mean that that's what's happening, but to you, that's how you feel. That's what you see. That's right. And if somebody doesn't take the time to sit down and listen to that and have a conversation about it and walk you through things and explain things and give you different perspectives on things, then you're never going to. So by saying, c'est bon pour la ville, this is going to be cool and this is good and that is good, that's not helping people come along with it.
Walk down Peel Street and tell me it's not happening.
It's
happening.
Murray's.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't want to go for pudding at Murray's. No, like I'm not that old yet. But if you know, Peel and St. Catherine used to be it was when I went with my dad downtown, there was like neon signs and
it was the epicenter.
Thousands of people, and now Peel Street has got like tents on it and only one car fits. Like it is happening. It's changing.
Yeah. It's a lot. People are asking for different. Look, Wellington Street, right? Wellington Street in Verdun. Yes. I can speak to Wellington Street. So Wellington Street was super controversial at first.
Yeah.
But so we have a merchants association comes in. We come out of the 1990s. You know how the 1990s were in Verdun. It was, and which is crazy because if the 1930s and 40s, Verdun was the fashion epicenter of
Yeah.
Montreal, which a lot of people to this day don't know that. The tramway, the dance floors,
Yeah.
the zoot suiters, the Navy guys fighting.
The boardwalk.
The
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
racetrack
Yeah.
where the last legal duel was held in Canada. The old...
How
the
long
old-
ago was
The old
that?
football stadium
Yes,
that's run by the
I
auditorium.
forgot, yeah.
I can name
Yeah.
a million things. And it's all just disappeared, you know? But so we have an SDC. They come in. They're like, okay, we're going to try to do something. A lot of it at the time I was watching it, I'm like, oh, you're just trying to copy Saint Laurent Boulevard. I mean, it was obvious. It's very obvious. It's
Yeah.
like they're doing something cool with their side. So they did the Cabane à Sucre, Cabane Panache Boiron. They do huge event, 3 days, 4 days. Super cool though. Everyone loved it. Everyone came out. You start to see the change of the demographic becomes obvious because now what's happening is you're pulling people out of their, I like to say the hiding places, their condos and all that, right? So now they're coming. Now you see them on the street and you're like, oh, wait a second, that's not the same. That's not the same as the person I grew up. That looks a little different, a little bit more hipster, a little bit whatever. I'm more used to seeing that at the Tam Tam or down at the Plateau.
Yeah.
As a kid, I used to love going downtown to Saint Laurent Street because it was an adventure to leave Verdun to go down there, and that's what cultured me. Right, was going somewhere else, going to Ben's, going to sports, doing these things. I was like, I didn't need that at home. But what's happened now is the notion of a 15-minute city, the notion of transit-oriented development. These are all big words that I throw out that I've learned over the time, but they make sense because cars have been made very affordable. Obviously, we know that cars are a lot more accessible today than they were back in the days of our parents. It's true. You can lease a car, you can lease to own a car. The commitment's very little. You can get it. People now don't want parking. So back in the avenues, back in the day, everyone had parking in the back, right? You all had the parking. Now people want yards. So they get rid of the parking spots in the back.
Yeah.
They green it. They make a nice big yard where they can, have their family, have events. But then they've got rid of their parking. Now they got to park on the street. But now they've got more cars, less parking, more on the street. But you live a block away from a metro, and you're taking the metro every day, but you're leaving your car there. So it's staying. So it's not rotating. There's no rotation. Now the street closes down. Okay, so you remove all that. First thing, oh my God, all the parking is gone. Oh no, you add temporary. Not temporary. The proper word is meter parking. So it's like there's a proper word for it. I can't think of it in English, but it's so you have paid parking. So it's calculated in terms of time. So you're not going to stay parked there like for 6 hours. You're going to park while you need it, and then you leave. Right. So there's a rotation. The parking that we added on all the side streets is more parking, if you count the meters, than was already there because you don't have bus stops, you don't have fire hydrants, you don't have a lot blocking it. So you have the parking, and you're never guaranteed you're going to get parking on the street. But that's part of the starting. But then what happens is by taking those spots, you're pushing the residents. Now, where did they park? Because they were parking on that street. There was no meter there. But then they were parking on one like that. So there's a butterfly effect to no matter what you do. But then those people want to come onto the street because they love the street when it's closed.
Right.
And then you get bars. And then here's a problem with bars. Verdun was a dry city. You remember this.
Yeah, of course.
146 years. I voted against the bars at first.
Yeah.
Why? Because now you don't have that natural rotation. What happens is me and you, we get up, we leave for work at 8:30 in the morning. We take our kids to whatever school, 8:30. We come back at 5. People come into work. They come to Grover. They come to a different business or whatever. They come in at 8:30. When I leave, they finish at like 5. They're gone by the time I get home through traffic. I've got parking. Now you got bars. Now you have a shift coming in that's working nights, that are working from 5 to 11 or 5 to 3 in the morning or something. So now the problem that I have is I have a problem with parking because I've got more employees. The metro's closed at that time. I have to come by car. Maybe I'll take an Uber. Maybe I'll take a Caminoto. Maybe it's like the problem is so complex in the sense of saying that it's not one action or one person's decision or one solution that's going to solve it. It's such a big picture and it's so complex that even I don't have an answer for it. But what I can do is I can identify the problems because they're you can benchmark them, you can see them. But the thing is, then what do you do about them?
Well, this basically what you're telling me is it is an issue. It is being addressed by City Hall, and it is part of the platform of the people who are currently running the city.
Because the war against car thing is it's the way I look at it is, and I hear it, and I get where people feel that way, but it's not necessarily a war. What it is it's saying, okay, how do we, if you're not going to take your car, how do I incite you not to take your car?
Right.
What's the incentive I can give you that actually will maybe save you money. Maybe you can do it, but it's just we're stuck in our ways. How do you do it? I took the metro this morning I never take the metro.
To me, I lived for almost 10 years. I lived maybe 500 yards from the Villa Maria Metro in NDG. I was on the metro all the time. It was stupid for me to take my car.
Yeah.
You know, if I wanted to go downtown, it was ridiculous. You know, the metro was right there. If I was, hosting a gig at Place des Arts, why would I drive to Place des Arts and pay $30 for parking and go through the cones so it made sense. So if transit is accessible and you're close to it, I think most people, and it's efficient.
Yep.
Most people reliable would opt for it.
Yep.
So that leads me to a new topic. Will the REM change some of this picture that you're talking about?
It's an interesting question. I don't know.
Okay.
Because you know why? Because what we saw, and I mean, we're all from the same generation. So Amma Bay Roxborough, or even if you look at Brossard, what's the gare there for the buses?
The big terminus.
I forget what it's called.
Terminus.
So if you look at those things, a lot of people are driving in because they have to come in from a little bit further in the suburbs.
Yeah.
They park, they pay for their parking, they jump on the subway and they come in. But so you would think it would work.
Yeah.
But you see that around these stations, people are still coming by car.
Yeah.
Because they got to drop their kid off at daycare. They got to do another thing in the morning. They can't do that by bike or by walking, and they'll never get to work on time or something.
Yeah.
So there's still services and things that don't allow you not to use a car in some cases. And you've got to use it. It's got to be an option. It's got to be an option.
The idiotic thing in Kirkland where they're saying, the REM is going to come right here, but you're not going to be able to park near it. You've got to take the bus to it. Well, that doesn't work for a lot of working families.
And exactly. So the logic for me and something like that is we know that somebody had told me that a long time ago. They asked me what the REM project was before it started.
Right.
And this is when I was still very green in politics. And I appreciate the question because I didn't have an answer, right? This was somebody who was seasoned. And they said, what do you think it is? And totally they were fishing. And I said, I have no clue. It's a transportation project, obviously, right?
It's a choo-choo train.
And he said no. He said it's a development project. And I'm like, what do you mean it's a development project? And they said, they're going to have to expropriate all the land.
Right.
And then what's going to happen is where are the highest taxes and where are the most valuable real estate?
Yeah.
It's within a walk to the station. So all the land around these REM stations is going to pop up to these towers.
Well, look what's happening at Fairview.
Exactly. But now
it's going to be
So you need parking. You want to densify. You want tax money. You want all that. For me, the solution's simple. And this started a long time ago. Forget surface parking. Force it to be underground because you go to the Montreal Canadiens hockey game, and you guys know because you've been downtown a million times and you've done shows there and everything. There is more underground parking available in all of downtown Montreal than there is surface parking and street parking.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper.
Yeah, you're right about that.
But nobody knows.
Yeah.
And I always, even myself, I find myself falling victim to it all the time. I go downtown, I go to Peel, I go to something for like Remembrance Day, or I go for the St. Patrick's Day parade, I go somewhere. There's underground parking everywhere, and I don't use it, but it's there, and it's $12 for the day.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go park in a meter and then constantly be recharging my meter, and I'm looking for a meter place when I can just park and walk and get to where I got to go quickly. Nobody uses it because it's not well identified. But when there's a hockey game, damn well you will know where the underground parking is because people are going to tell you it's here because they make money off of it.
I was going to say it's probably more than $12 for the hockey game.
It's definitely more than $12 for the hockey game, but there's accessible stuff like that. So when projects are built, like a REM project or something, this cannot be an option. It has to be
part of it.
It has to be forced. It has to be like, you want to develop in this zone. So the zoning here requires X amount of underground parking. That's it. That's all. And it has to be a part of the picture.
You're very good at this, and I'm going to give you a chance to take a breath, because I'm not sure you've answered any of my questions. But
I don't know if I have. No,
I think we've been
entertaining.
We've been having a good debate about it.
It's because I think about it as I'm saying it, right? Because I'm not going to answer just like I'm not going to give you a cassette answer.
Okay, take a breath. We have to thank a couple of our sponsors.
Speaking of parking meters,
yes. Oh, c'est bon.
I know a guy.
Yeah. We've got a loaner from Jaguar Land Rover Laval, which is one of our sponsors. And every time Terry flies in from Vancouver to do the podcast, I call them up and I say, hey, could we have one of those Jaguar F-type convertible coupes for me to drive Terry around in? And they laugh and laugh and laugh. Actually, they gave us the coupe one time, not the convertible, but the coupe. That was fun. And this time around, they've given us a Jaguar XF sedan with an inline 4-liter turbo. It's got quite the giddy up, and it's a beautiful car. It's not the old grandpa Jaguar like they used to be. It's pretty snazzy and pretty sporty. And hopefully I'm not going to get a ticket because it's parked outside.
I still have my Montreal parking app.
And thank God that you do. Yeah, we haven't. We've let it sit there for about 2 hours, and knock on wood, we forgot to add to the meter yesterday, and we were okay. But I think it's going to catch up with us eventually.
It's a nice color too. It's hunter green.
No, it's black. Actually.
Is it black? It
Yeah.
looks hunter green.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks hunter. I'm parked right behind it. I think
Oh, is that right?
might be scuffed.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a bench in my way while I was double parking.
Well, when Jaguar Land Rover Laval gets that ticket, they'll look at their records and say, that one goes to Ted Bird. And I'll gladly pay it because that's on me. The XF, the F-Type we've mentioned. They've also got a full line of SUVs, the F-Pace, the I-Pace, the E-Pace. The F-Pace SVR is the one I'm going to go for next time. 550 horsepower, which, of course, everybody needs, Sterling. What are you going to do without 550 horsepower?
Hey, listen, horses rule the world.
There you go. And on the Land Rover side, the Defender, the Discovery, the Range Rover, you know all about Jaguars and Land Rovers. They're quality British luxury vehicles. They speak for themselves. The difference, we like to say at Jaguar Land Rover Laval, is the customer experience, which starts at the top with Nino and Renato Di Cubelis, their two co-owners, nicest guys in the history of the world, and as a result of which they have the nicest staff in the history of the world. Wonderful people. It's down-to-earth service at a high-end dealership, and I strongly recommend it. Don't buy a luxury vehicle until you go to Jaguar Land Rover Laval. Visit them online at jaguarlaval.com or landroverlaval.com. Don't go to randloverlaval.com. Trust me, especially not if you're at work.
That's a Star Wars thing.
Rand Lover's not good. That's not a good website to go to. I'm sure they'll appreciate that commercial.
And while we're talking about families, I want to remind you about the shopping experience you can have at Matelas Bonheur. I've said this many times on the podcast and on the radio over the years. Buying a mattress is not an easy or fun thing because you're flopping around on a mattress with strangers. You're trying to think of what it would be like to have that mattress in your bedroom. You're trying to decide whether you want to sleep on that mattress for the next 10 years. You know, before your knees give out, do you buy that mattress today? If you're looking for help and you're looking for people who only dedicate their business to one discipline, it's the folks at Matelas Bonheur. It's family run. It's Quebec owned. They deal with mostly Canadian suppliers. They take a great deal of pride in that. When you go into the store, you're warmly welcomed, asked a couple of questions, and then they let you go in the beautifully designed stores. You're not hounded. Nobody bothers you until you have questions for the staff. I don't like to shop and be followed around. That's not the way they do things at Matelas Bonheur. They've been doing it for a long time. It all started years ago at the first store on Gouin Boulevard, which is still there in Saint-Geneviève. You can still go in there and get a mattress or sheets or pillows or linens or whatever it is you're looking for to get a better night's sleep. That's what it's all about, better night's sleep. Family-run business that will proudly welcome you into the store. And like I said, if you're looking for a mattress, make that your first stop. Find the location near you. There are plenty of them on and off the island of Montreal. matelasbonheur.ca.
You want to do the tweet sheet for a little bit of fun before we get back to you grilling Sterling about
Well, I was going to say you can talk
events?
now because poor Sterling, I was dominating the conversation.
Well, listen, no, that's fine because it's been good and I've been enjoying it. Let's do the tweet sheet just for a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
Are you on Twitter, Sterling?
I am.
I've got something I do on my morning radio program on Light 1067 every day called the tweet sheet. I find 3 funny tweets, which isn't too hard. There's a lot of the funny on Twitter. It can be a real cesspool, a real garbage can, but there's a lot of funny on Twitter. So I find these funny tweets and I use them on my radio show. And then I find some that I can't use on the radio, just the same way that I wouldn't be able to say fucko on the radio. So I saved them for the podcast.
I love it.
And I've curated 3 with you in mind. I've done that this
For all our guests.
Yeah, for all our guests.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember the 3 I saved for you, but it just nothing specific. Just things that I thought, okay, Sterling would probably like this one. So let's have a look at what we've got here.
And I have to say, you haven't called him Stewart yet.
No,
You were worried
I'm
about that.
focused. I'm very focused.
Hyper-focused.
Yeah, very, very focused. This one's from Brick Mahoney. So HR says it's unacceptable to bring my lunch in a bottle and that vodka isn't soup.
But it's technically, is it a potato soup?
It could be, yeah.
could.
That's
I would just
right.
argue it's potato
Yeah,
soup.
There you go. That's a good argument.
Boy, is that ever a 2023 tweet when you think about corporations?
Yeah.
HR's on the phone.
Vodka isn't soup.
Got to stay hydrated.
From Fickle Nuts. My cat has a lot of audacity for someone who shits in a box.
Can I just say?
mine.
Can I just
Yes.
say the fickle nuts is the part that bothers me more than
Fickle Nuts, yeah. Actually, some of the names, HR, are
are
even
so
funnier
fun,
than
yeah.
the tweets.
Well, is it the cat's name? Is it Fickle Nuts?
no,
Because
that's the
I
name
think
of the.
it's- yeah.
That's just
The
the name of the,
account.
because
the
if
account.
because if you're shitting in a box, you might have
Could be-
fickle
yeah, you
nuts.
might, yeah.
Depending on how low they hang. I'm just saying. Sorry.
That makes perfect sense. And lastly, we've got from @3 Sons. I don't know who needs to hear this, but your baby won't remember your Disney vacation. Save $5,000 and take them to the mall.
That one resonates closely
Oh, yeah?
because somebody wants me to sign a passport so that my kid can go to Disney, and that's not going to
Really?
happen. Yeah, that's it. And so I get behind this one saying, wait until they're much older. They can do something more fun with the 5K.
Well, while we're talking about that, I'm puzzled by. I've been to a bunch of concerts recently. I'm puzzled by people that take infants, babies, to concerts in arenas, like loud shows,
Loud rock concerts?
and they put headphones on the babies, or you bring like a 2-year-old to Disney World. They're not going to remember that.
When
Nope.
Sam was born in July, so May would be, 10 months. When
Yeah.
he was 10 months old, we took him to Belgium. But the method to the madness was we went and visited your friend and mine, Michael McNally,
Right.
who was living in Brussels at the time. And the priest at his local parish went to the seminary with Pope John Paul II. So we took Sam and got him baptized
Okay, well
by that priest.
that's different. You were actually bringing him to do something
Yes,
for
yeah.
him.
Yeah, we weren't
but-
taking him to Bruges to go, look at that, Sam.
the
It's much easier to body surf an infant than a full-grown male adult. You realize, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to go body surfing or stage diving, weight is a factor.
I was, you want to go up to these people and say, I'm not sure that the infant's a fan of,
Yeah.
Green Day or whoever
Well,
it is.
everybody gets to parent the way they want to
I know.
parent, right?
Yeah,
They're
I
kids.
mean, is that fair?
I mean, in my defense, from my son when he was, his introduction was 3 months old. His first event was the Irishman of the Year breakfast.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was okay, but full on bagpipes, Scottish
Oh,
Centre,
yeah.
Highland Games, St. Patrick's Day Parade, and military events. And the only
Right.
reason is I wanted him to grow up knowing what bagpipes were, and I wanted
Right.
him to be familiar with it. And today he is. But it's interesting how it's true. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, would I take my kid to a concert?
Yeah.
That sounds to me like it's more out of convenience because you can't find a babysitter.
That's what I think. That's what I think it is.
And that's a shame. And
Yeah.
that's a shame because then you're putting your
Yeah.
interest before your child's, unfortunately. Not to judge, right?
No.
Who's to judge?
Well,
Because
that's
that is that person's reality
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
moment in their life.
There you go.
Yeah, you mentioned the military. Have you got the military
I'm
bug like
judging.
I do? I've seen you at the Black Watch. I've always had an interest in military history and in the military, and one of my regrets is that I never served. Did you?
I never served. I never had the discipline. Tried cadets in the
Oh,
1980s.
at least you tried. Good
tried
on
cadets.
you. Good on
tried,
you.
Tried Donnacona cadets back in the day when they were still on Drummond Street.
That's Navy cadets,
Navy
right?
cadets,
And that's
yeah.
because your dad was in the Navy?
Yeah, that's because my
Did they
dad
have
was in
the
the Navy.
prickly,
Was he still alive when you?
Yeah, when I was in the
yeah?
cadets, yeah, he tried, but I think that lasted like maybe a month.
Did they have the prickly uniforms?
Oh yeah,
They
you
had,
had.
they had the prickly uniforms, and and I didn't like bell bottoms at the time. Who would have known that they would have came back in during the rave,
Wow, yeah.
in the 90s,
Yeah.
and then maybe I would have liked them.
I tried air cadets for second
and that was
or
my
two.
second one.
Yeah.
I tried air cadets in
Yeah.
high school. They had an air cadet. They had a corps in our high school, and I tried it because I thought it would be fun to fly gliders and
Yeah.
do stuff like that. But it was the academic part of it and the studying
Right.
and the drilling. It was the part that I never had. So the question's interesting though. So my father, like I said, Second World War veteran. My
Yeah.
grandmother saw 2 world wars. My grandmother used to fuse grenades in a munitions factory. My uncle, survivor of the sinking of the Athabascan. List goes on. My father, after the war, 51, 53, signs up with the Black Watch to go with one of his good friends who was in the watch during the Second World War. He goes over to Rotterdam, Germany. My nephew's now in the Black Watch, who I'm very proud of, who's serving in the infantry. My whole family, all the men, pretty much all Navy though. They were all Navy. Like every uncle, everyone, all Navy. And never had the discipline. But it's exactly that, right? So when I got elected, I had to start doing some stuff. It started through Scottish community, Sons of Scotland, right in Verdun. So Sons of Scotland, Black Watch are obviously very involved. Black Watch, the Irish stuff, all there. And I just got the bug. I was like, and then I started to discover my father's history. I went to the archives, got his military records, his Navy records, his Black Watch, and then I was like, I'm involved with the Black Watch. My father was a member here. I'm like, God, this is incredible. Tons of stuff like that. And ever since, like I said, I had a interesting relationship with my father. It was always there for us, lived at home, provided for us. God bless him every single day of his life. Had his drinking, obviously, because of what he saw, but wasn't a bad man, wasn't an alcoholic. Wasn't an aggressive or anything like that, but he struggled with his alcoholism. And as soon as I was able to get involved with the military, I got involved 150%. And I've been involved ever since, whether it's the CGG, Black Watch, Régiment Maisonneuve, the Royal Canadian Navy with Donnacona, you name it, I am there all the time, every military dinner that I can be at. I'm part of the Black Watch Veterans Association. I'm a proud member of the Royal Canadian Legion, and I have been for almost 10 years. Anywhere I can get involved, I'm now, I was just named to the board of directors of the Fondation Québécoise des Vétérans. You name it, I lay a wreath every year for Remembrance Day downtown at Place Canada for homeless veterans. I'm involved with homeless veterans. The list goes on. I'm super involved with our fire department. I'm a huge supporter of our fire services and our veterans of the fire service. Police, even though I've had a very rocky road with the police over my life, I've learned to have a lot of respect for a lot of the people serving in the police force. There's a lot of good people that are there. There's bad apples in everything, just like there are in politics, but the service that they do, and when I think about things like Dawson or anything, when these people run into a situation without thinking about themselves, when I think about 9/11, when I think about Pierre Lacroix passing recently in Montreal, this kind of service for me is so important. And to be able to be a part of this and to be somebody who never had the discipline to serve, but to be a part of it as close as I am, because I'm not just somebody on the sidelines. I am literally in it as if I'm serving, and I'm treated that way by the people that are serving. And I carry that privilege and I carry that proximity with enormous humility. And again, with respect and responsibility. You will never not see me at a Remembrance Day ceremony. You will never not see me at a Battle of the Atlantic ceremony. You will never not see me at the last post or the Field of Honor if I can be there for an event. It's just it's my way of reconnecting with my father and celebrating his service and what he did, and making sure that the people that he served with that didn't come back are remembered, and making sure just everything. My uncle, same thing on the Athabascan. Half of that ship, more than half of that destroyer was lost. I mean,
More than half of the crew.
More than half of the crew were lost. I mean, there was 80 survivors, I think, of the Athabascan. There's a great book on her called The Unlucky Lady, and it's all about the sinking of the Athabascan when she was torpedoed in the English Channel. And Harry Hurwitz, you might remember the name Harry Hurwitz. He was a Navy veteran. He was the last living member of the sinking of the Athabascan who was a war. He was a prisoner of war. I met him through the legions and through my work with the city. And one day in a ceremony, it was a ceremony in, where's the Jewish army ceremony? It's at Ville Saint Laurent, I think, somewhere in Ville Saint Laurent. I was asked to go speak for the mayor at a remembrance ceremony for the Jewish community, for Jewish war veterans. And Harry Hurwitz was there, and he was being introduced, and his family and everything. I hadn't thought about my uncle's service because I think about my father's. And they name Harry Hurwitz, Athabascan.
And you didn't know?
I'm like, Athabascan. I'm like, my uncle's a survivor of the Athabascan. I'm like, and I had the best conversation with him and his family. After I'm like, my uncle served with you. My uncle, and this is like, ooh, makes me a little emotional, but I'm like, my uncle served with you. He survived alongside you. You were both in a prison camp together. I'm connected to you through my uncle, but like, I mean, we don't know each other, but I know you as if you're my grandfather or my uncle because of your story is his story. And it was so emotional for me. And it was at that point that I realized that there's a way for us to connect to this. And it's important. Remembrance, service, paying respect is so important. And I do it in schools. I do the Poppy campaign. I go in schools and I talk about remembrance. I did a great video. If you ever get a chance to go on the internet, you do a search for Poppy campaign, Sterling Downey. There's a video of remembrance. I did that myself with the guys from Cat Around Films, very important, great guys, great little media like company. And we did that for remembrance during the pandemic because nobody was going to be able to gather to do remembrance things. And we were like, and nobody was selling poppies. We couldn't sell poppies in banks or anything. We were like, how can we raise awareness about the importance of the poppy during the pandemic? And we made this really important, impactful video. And it talks about not just Second World War veterans, not just Korean War veterans, not just about World War I veterans. It talks about our current veterans who have come back from Cyprus, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Haiti, people who have come back from any deployment or anywhere where they've seen any kind of conflict or loss, or even if they haven't lost anyone themselves, seeing other people losing things, struggling, losing. Rwanda, I've had the privilege to speak alongside Romeo Dallaire and speak to this man and hear him talk and know his story and be like, when you stand amongst these people, it's to not want to be a better person. I don't understand. If you stand and you have the privilege to be next to these people or sit at a table or a dinner with these people or spend any time with them and understand, and you do not leave there wanting to be a better person and serve, I don't get it, because it makes me want to do more and more every time.
There's so much to unpack there, and it leads me to ask you the question, what is a day like for you, Sterling? As a counselor, do you get up and go to the office? And is that the way the day goes or begins?
Rarely for me. And I hate to say it, I like to be out in the public. So I try to get out as much as possible. And I try to serve the community. There's different ways of serving the community.
Right.
You can do paperwork and you can be really, well informed on your files. I read up on my files that I need to read up on. I discuss them with my colleagues to make sure that I have a good understanding or perspective of them. And then once I've got that, the stuff that I like to do is be out in the community. So and it's not because I want to be at events and ceremonies and I want to be speaking. It's what I've recognized is going out. Like, again, I get up at 9 a.m. if I'm lucky, get out of the house, go to a couple of meetings here and there.
Right.
And in between all of those things, spend time with people on the street. Go when somebody has an issue, they call me. I go see them.
Right.
It's something I swore to. There was a very well-known counselor in Verdun called John Gallagher.
Mm-hmm.
You might know the name.
Yeah.
And the O'Reillys and all that.
Yeah.
So I'm brought up by the O'Reillys, the Quinns, the Gallaghers. These are the people that are.
Yeah.
And when I was asked to run in politics, John Gallagher was very ill and he was in the hospital in Crawford Park. And I went up to him and I spoke to him and I asked him, not for his blessing, but I made him a promise. I grew up on the stories of John, like when there was snow removal going on, he would be in his Cadillac driving in front of the snow removal trucks to make sure the streets were cleared for the residents in his neighborhood. And when somebody had a problem, John would come to their house with a little notepad and he would sit in their house. And
Old school.
So I heard those stories before I was elected and I was like, if I can choose to be somebody in politics, that's who I'm going to be.
Do you have to go to City Hall? Do you have to be there?
Only for meetings, only for council, for things like
Right.
that. But I mean, I am there. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of briefings. There's a lot of files.
Right.
There's a lot of decision making. So
Does the mayor lean on you for anything?
No, because there's a disconnect there. Because because I'm not on the executive committee.
Okay.
Because I'm not. So does the mayor lean on me? I actually, yes, she does.
Can you get her on the phone?
I could get her on the phone probably, but I mean,
Let's give her a shout.
no, but so like the mayor. So the mayor. What I can say is. One thing that I appreciate about her, and I say this in all sincerity, because all of us have our pros and our cons, and so does she. And don't forget, the mayor worked at Vimy when she was a teenager. She was in Vimy in France. She did the summer there. The mayor understands my dedication, my passion, and my commitment to the military, to the fire, and to all that. And I've been given the privilege to be the liaison, basically, for everything that is veterans, everything that is military, everything that is Navy. It goes through me, and I am the one present at these things. So she may not show up at these things,
right?
But it's not because she doesn't care.
Support,
she cares enough, and it's very important for me. She will come to them when she's asked, but she cares enough that somebody who is actually invested in it and she knows will stay. Like, I'm at the beginning of the event, and I'm there. I'm the last person out.
Right.
So she does lean on me for some things. I'm lucky. But I don't ever want to be on the executive committee. I don't ever want to be in charge of a major file, because the thing is, I want to be accessible.
Yeah, you want to be in your community.
And you can't be both. And that's not slighting my colleagues. My colleagues make a sacrifice, and you'll see those sacrifices. What happens in elections is people who choose to have those positions on the executive committee or that, sometimes they're not reelected because
they're not there.
And it's not because they're not doing work, but they're not there.
That kind of sorry, Tara. I was just going to say that kind of answered the question I wanted to ask you. Do you aspire beyond municipal politics?
If people need me somewhere and they ask me, and if people think I can do it, I'll try to continue to serve people to the best of my ability if I'm asked to. If people ask me, but will I aspire on my own? No. If things are brought onto my radar, like this is an option, I'll consider it, but I have to consider how will I use that to serve. If I can't find an answer to that question, then to have a title or to just be somebody and to collect a salary, I can't sleep well at night doing that.
Can you, because you know the history and you mentioned the canal before, can you tell me the story of the Pink House?
It's kind of a little secret.
Yeah,
it's just a street art. It's just
an art exhibit.
It's
right?
It's an art statement. It's this shack that's on the top. It's an actual booth that's on the top of the silo. It must have been like a foreman's booth for something. They were probably when cranes were operating or whatever. And that building we've been going into that building for probably like 30 years. Painting is very dangerous.
Yeah.
But going in there, so some people have gone up. Some people rappelled off the side of it with climbing equipment and painted the side of the silos. I mean, people do all kinds of crazy things for visibility. But out of everything that's been done on that building, every risk that's been taken by people painting it or doing something crazy, the thing that's the most impactful is that Pink House. And it can be seen from everywhere.
Yeah, and I get asked about it all the time. And I take a lot of pride in knowing all about my city. And I've always had to say, I have no idea what that is and why.
It's just a statement. It's just something pretty to look at and something fun.
We have to, before we wrap it up, and we'll wrap it up here in just a second or two, we got to say thanks to the last two sponsors of the day. And that includes, and this one's always a lot of fun, there's a mechanical engineering firm that sponsors
Sean,
the podcast.
You're doing this commercial, Sterling.
Sean Smith.
I'm telling you, when he called us, Sterling, I was like, I think you got the wrong
Vozwin.
podcast.
Sean Smith, also a member of the Black Watch. He's involved with the association. Sean is an incredible guy. Sean he gives back to his community. He volunteers. He's involved with everything. I've tried to get him involved with drone programs at our elementary schools to teach kids how to build drones and fly drones, and he's been trying to figure it out for years. Sean Smith is just like salt of the earth people with values that we grew up on about giving back. There's no ego. He's not pretentious. He doesn't know better than anyone else. He's a sincere individual.
And he's got a brain the size of a pumpkin too, eh?
Yeah.
I don't get it because mine is not the size mine's the size of a pea. So
we had lunch with him and I immediately liked him. And I said, I'm not so sure that we can help you. And he said, yeah, you can help me tell people about my company where I will take an idea out of somebody's head and put the idea into their hands. If you've got an idea for an invention of some kind, I know Ted is harboring some kind of invention that he's only told a few people about.
And everybody hates it.
And everybody hates it.
Including Sean.
Is it a distillery?
No.
But I'm really proud to be able to speak on his behalf, because he told us that he's gotten some phone calls from people.
He's getting people
from
who
the
listen to the
podcast
podcast
and
calling
saying,
him
"Hey,
and
that's awesome.
wanting to do business.
Yeah,
and he
I've got
started
an
some
idea."
projects from that came from here, which
That's
is
crazy.
great.
That's crazy.
Tell us about the COT,
The CTO,
the
Chief
CT
Technology
Yep,
Officer
there you go.
Style Service. They provide support with development of your business plans, technology roadmap, creating milestone maps, and making introductions to key stakeholders to help further your technology business. They have packages for that. He'll take you right from the beginning. Okay, here's my idea for an invention, Sean. It's a walking iron. It walks itself to the ironing board, lifts itself up, and irons the shirt. I don't have to do a thing.
Right.
And he tells you how to, or he helps you produce the product and get it to market and go through all the legal loopholes that you have to go through, and start to finish. Like Terry says, he takes the idea from your head, puts it in your hands. Vozwin. Vozwin.com, Vozwin.
And we're sorry to report the demise of the Bavarian money machine, because this was a
The Bavarian money pit.
money pit, not machine.
Yeah. I wish it was a money
Yeah,
machine.
no kidding. Because it was a nice intro all the time to talk about our friends at Merson.
Yeah. What are you taking the car to Merson for this week,
Yeah.
Ed?
Yeah.
I made the mistake of buying a pre-owned German luxury car.
Oh,
And
Paid the
never,
price.
never, ever,
Yeah.
ever again.
And you would have been lost without Cara and Celso
absolutely,
and Charlie
yeah.
the staff.
The engine seized last weekend,
Yeah.
so it has met its maker.
Yes.
I'd like to believe I have a German luxury vehicle as well, Volkswagen.
Oh,
Well, that's what I had before.
yeah,
It's reliable.
And
Never had any
exactly,
trouble with it. There you go.
exactly, and that's what I'm getting next as
There you
well.
go, Volkswagen.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm going back to that. But yeah, every time something went wrong, I'd take it down to Merson, and I always knew that I was going to be treated honestly. I always knew that I wasn't going to get the old, oh boy, that's going to run you. I mean, it might have run me in some instances, but that's just because that's the way it was.
Tune-ups, brakes, tires, anything that has anything to do with your car. You're dealing with a family-run business has been around a very long time. They're as honest as the day is long. And if you don't know anything about cars, like Ted and I, if you pop the hood of our cars, our eyes just glaze over.
Yeah.
These are the people you want to deal with. They're at the same corner where they've been for many years, corner of St. Jacques and Cavendish. And the website, Ted?
MersonAuto.com.
When do you have to run for re-election, Sterling?
Next elections are going to be in 2025,
Okay.
November 2025.
So you got some time.
Got some time still. Yeah.
And when you look ahead or back, what are some of the things that you hope to achieve in terms of, I don't know, change, development, things that will be different when you walk away from that post?
What I hope is that my years that I've spent in politics that I've done, one, I hope that the legacy that I leave is that somebody else who will come along is inspired to do it like I did for John Gallagher.
Right.
That somebody says that Sterling Downey was not always liked by everyone, but he was respected and he was always accessible and he was there and he was on the ground for his community. And that's the kind of politician I want to be municipally. So I hope that transfers. I hope that I've created an expectation or I've raised the bar high enough that people will try to honor that bar. I don't know if that'll happen, but I mean, part
I
of
think it
that might
will.
be my job too, is to make sure that the person who comes in and
Who doesn't like you? Introduce them to me, and I'll give them somebody to not like.
no, but it is what it is, and it's a question of but that's the big fear is like who's going to do.
I think you've already left an impression. You've done an amazing job. You have a unique approach, and as been proved by your 3 terms, the people have said, "Yeah, you know what? We like this guy, and we like what he does." And as you point out, even if they don't always agree with you, they want them representing you, and that's something to be very proud of.
No, I'm definitely proud of it, and I consider it, like I said, it's a huge privilege. I'm humbled, and it's never something that I would have ever expected growing up. I'm glad, in some way, it's peace of mind. Losing my parents young, and them not being at my wedding, them not seeing my son when he was born, and this and that. But I hope that my service resonates with them wherever they are, and that they understand that where they decided to make a home for me and raise me, I've stayed true to there. I've stayed there. I've stayed in the same house. I fought for the school that my mother chose to put me in, and I fought to keep it open so other mothers and other children could go there. So on and so forth. And, and my father, same thing, the Legion, you name it, or military service. I hope my father understands that he may have had some sour, bitter memories of his service, obviously, but I hope that he understands now that it's like, well, I can honor his memory and people who served with him and future people. Like, it's just leaving that impression and reminding people that we have to respect one another. We're a community. We care about each other. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to always get along. We can be tough with one another. We can say things that sometimes hurt. But at the end of the day, we've got to hold strong, hold fast, and look after our city. And I think that a lot of people want to do that. And it can't be about self-advancement. I truly believe that if all the things that I did in my life led me to being asked to go into politics, then I have to trust, maybe it's a little silly, but I truly believe it, that whatever's ahead, it's not going to be me who's going to choose it. It's going to be somebody else who's going to say, this is where we need you. Are you willing to rise to the task? Will you do this? And then I have to say yes or no, and I have to make the decision.
You've been a great guest. Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. Good get, Ted.
Thank you very much.
Nicely done.
Thanks.
Standing by, the Terry and Ted podcast has been brought to you by the UPS Store Canada, delivering more for small businesses in Canada.